Good morning. I'll call this first meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Education to order. And I believe this is the first interim joint meeting of the interim session, so it's good to see everyone here this morning. I'll please ask everyone to silence your cell phones. At this time, Jay, would you please call the roll?
Senator Carroll, Senator Givens, Senator Higdon, Senator Meredith, Senator Neal, Senator Rawlings, here. Senator Reed, here. Senator Thomas, Senator Tishner, here. Senator Williams, here. Senator Wilson, here. Senator Wise, Representative Baker, Representative Bojanowski,
here.
Representative Bratcher,
present.
Representative Brown,
here.
Representative Emily Callaway, Representative Josh Callaway, Representative Camuel,
Here.
Representative Chester Burton, Representative Kleins,
Here.
Representative Decker, Representative Doan, Representative Fleming, Representative Grossberg, Representative Grossel,
Present.
Representative Hale,
Here.
Representative Jackson,
Present.
Representative Massaroni, Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Payne,
Here.
Representative Petrie,
Here.
Representative Proctor, Representative Rayburn, Representative Riley,
Here.
Representative Stalker,
Present.
Representative Thompson, Representative Truitt, Representative Wilner,
Here.
Chair West, Co-Chair Lewis,
Here.
and Chair Tipton.
Chair Tipton is here. Co-Chair West may be here. He's running late. He had another meeting this morning he had to participate in. I want to recognize Co-Chair Lewis. You have any comments to begin the interim?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. We do have a new member on the committee, Representative Petrie. Glad to have you on the committee. You have any words of wisdom for us?
No words of wisdom. Thank you. Thank you for welcoming and happy to be here.
All right, good deal. Any members have any introductions they'd like to make this morning? Representative Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, it's not an introduction, but we do have a special birthday today. Representative Lewis has a birthday today. I'm not going to say how many, but you can tell by looking it's several. But we do want to wish him a happy birthday.
Representative Lewis, if you need directions to the Social Security office, I can guide you over there.
All right. 39 today and holding. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Any other introductions? The rules for our committee. I will administer an oath to all of our presenters. There are no signs allowed in the committee room. If you wish to speak on a subject, there is a sign-up sheet in the back of the room at the podium. Testimony will be allowed based on the discretion of the chair, based on time and previous information presented. At this time, we're going to start off with a Workforce Pell Grant update. We have a guest online, but I'm going to ask their folks from the Education and Labor Cabinet if you'll come to the front table and be ready to be on standby. I'm going to first start off with Autumn Rivera from National Conference of State Legislators. It's good to have you here with Autumn. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me? Good morning.
I can. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you, Autumn. I just saw you a couple of weeks ago, and I may be hearing some of the same stuff you presented a couple of weeks ago, but anyway,
I would imagine.
It's good to have you here, so please proceed and tell us about this Workforce Pell that was part of House Resolution 1 passed by Congress last July.
Absolutely. Am I sharing my own slides or is someone else sharing my slides?
You are sharing your own slides.
Great. Just wanted to make sure. Let me go ahead and get that up. You guys see that all right?
Not. Not yet. There we go. Thank you.
Great. Okay, well, I will go ahead and get started. So, good morning, co-chairs and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And like you said, my name is Autumn Rivera. I'm a senior policy specialist with the National Conference of State Legislatures. Today, I'm going to provide a high-level overview of Workforce Pell with more of a focus on state implementation questions that may be more relevant for legislatures. I'll kind of cover the basic federal framework, the timeline, the state role and program designation, and some early legislative trends that we're seeing across states. This will be kind of quick, but if you have more questions, I'd be happy to give more details. So let's get started. Workforce Pell is significant because for the first time, states have a formal role in Pell administration. So traditionally, Pell has been a federal student aid program administered through institutions and the U.S. Department of Education. Workforce Pell, however, keeps the federal framework, but adds a state designation step for short-term workforce programs. There are about 4 implementation areas I'll walk through quickly today. First, it'll be program basics, so what types of short-term programs may qualify. Second, governance, who makes the decisions at the state level and how agencies coordinate. Third, accountability and data, the federal performance standards and the state data systems they rely on. And then finally, funding and student support. So how Workforce Pell awards work and how they may interact with existing state aid, workforce funding, and student support strategies. So let's talk about the Workforce Pell timeline. So the key date here is July 1, 2026. That's when Workforce Pell becomes available for eligible programs. But the program won't move immediately into its full accountability framework quite then. There's a transition period from 2026 through 27 through 2028-29 for completion and placement calculations. Beginning in 2029-2030, there'll be stricter standardized accountability calculations begin. That kind of matters because programs that start earlier will eventually need to demonstrate that students are completing and being placed in employment at required levels. Then beginning in 2030, 2031, the value-added earnings test begins to bind. So that test looks at whether the earnings outcomes for program completers are high enough relative to program cost. So one thing to think about the timeline is that July of 2026 starts the program, but the accountability system phases in over several years. I'll also note here that the Department of Education, as well as other organizations and states, do expect that this is kind of an on-ramp. Although it starts July 1 does not mean all of your programs need to be available at that point. So keeping that in mind, I think, is important when thinking about this complicated program. So let's look at the basic level. Workforce Pell, like I said, extends Pell eligibility to short-term workforce programs. So qualified programs have to run between 8 and 14 weeks and include 150 to 599 clock hours. They need to be offered by a Title IV eligible institution, which means Workforce Pell is not open to every training provider. Programs must prepare students for high skill, high wage, or in-demand occupation. They also need to lead to a recognized post-secondary credential that is stackable to another credential. They have also need to operated for at least 1 year, which means states and institutions will be probably looking at existing programs rather than brand new programs at this first instance for Workforce Pell. There are a couple of distinctions I think that are important that I'm going to go ahead and point out for you. So approval under WIOA's eligible training provider list doesn't automatically make a program eligible for Workforce Pell. Programs still have to meet that Workforce Pell criteria. So all those things I just listed. There's also limits around outsourcing to third-party providers. Although registered apprenticeship-related instruction is treated somewhat differently, you'll see that may exceed the 25% cap on this slide, but they need to remain under 50%. And then finally, Workforce Pell can apply to both credit-bearing and non-credit programs, which is important because many short-term workforce programs sit outside traditional degree pathways and weren't eligible for traditional Pell. So let's talk about Workforce Pell governance. So federal law created a 2-step process. First, governors in consultation with state workforce boards will designate programs as eligible. Then the U.S. Department of Education will verify Pell eligibility through the Title IV process. However, in practice, we know implementation will probably involve a broader set of state actors, whether that's state higher education agencies, workforce agencies, community and technical college systems, governor's offices, and workforce boards may all have different pieces of the process. It's kind of where the state governance becomes important. States may need to decide how program approval, labor market definitions, data collection, and oversight are coordinated across these different agencies. Another implementation question that's kind of important around this is distance education. So governors can enter bilateral agreements with other states for distance education programs, which could matter for those students enrolled in online or cross-state programs. The main takeaway here in this section is that federal law names a formal state role, but states will probably need to determine what that really looks like operationally for their context. So there comes Workforce Pell accountability and data. So programs must meet 3 standards: 70% completion, 70% job placement, and the value-added earnings test. The completion standard looks at whether students complete within the required time frame. The placement standard looks at whether completers are employed, and then eventually, like I mentioned down the line, whether the employment aligns with the target occupation connected to the program. That won't be at the beginning, but a couple years down the line. The value-added earnings test looks at whether median earnings measured after completion are high enough relative to 150% of the federal poverty line and the tuition and fees charged by the programs. That's kind of the more complicated one to look into. I'm happy to go over that more in depth if that's helpful. For states, the big implementation issue here is kind of data capacity. So placement depends heavily on wage records. Non-credit programs won't always be captured the same way post-secondary data systems as credit-bearing programs are. And then occupation-aligned placement will require more detailed data than basic employment status. So this is not only an accountability question, it's also kind of a data infrastructure question. Okay, so let's look at the Workforce Pell funding and student support. So Workforce Pell awards are expected to be prorated, which awards are ranging from approximately $120-ish to $4,300. That means Workforce Pell may reduce cost barriers for some students, but it's probably not going to eliminate those entirely. Students in short-term workforce programs may still face costs related to that transportation, childcare, books, advising, and career coaching. This is also where Workforce Pell interacts with existing state investments. So, lots of states already invest heavily in short-term credential programs, and many states have their own financial aid, workforce training, credential, or scholarship programs. So implementation may involve questions about how Workforce Pell already coordinates with programs that already exist, thinking about state aid, WIOA, Perkins, apprenticeship funding, and other workforce investments. The key point here is that Workforce Pell adds a new federal funding stream, but it's probably likely it'll operate alongside existing state systems rather than completely replacing them. So for legislatures, I would group the implementation questions into a few broad categories. And this is kind of the slide I think that might be worth considering. So what are some of the things that states are going to need to grapple with? One is program eligibility and design. So states may be looking at which programs qualify, which programs may need redesign, and which programs remain kind of outside Workforce Pell. Second is around governance. So states may need to determine who leads designation and how agencies coordinate across higher education, workforce, and those other systems. A third is around data. So states may need to assess whether existing data systems can support reporting, accountability, and program review. And a fourth is fit with existing state strategies. So like I said, Workforce Pell may intersect with state goals around credential quality, workforce development, affordability, apprenticeship, and post-secondary alignment. So there are some potential legislative roles that could be considered around governance and oversight, eligibility and program design, data infrastructure, funding and student supports, and that coordination across systems that I've kind of covered today. I would frame all of these as kind of options that states can consider. The right approach will depend on each state's existing governance structures, program, and data capacity. And then quickly, I just wanted to highlight a handful of legislative trends we're kind of seeing in this space. We're tracking those early related to a Workforce Pell. So far, we're seeing kind of some broad trends in this space. The first is codifying state implementation. So some states are putting the state approval process into statute, incorporating that federal criteria into state law. Other states are directing governance. Some bills are clarifying the roles of governors, workforce boards, higher education agencies, or other state entities in the governance, in the designation process. The third is adding state level oversight. This can include around reporting, monitoring data, costs, and review provisions. And the fourth is connecting Workforce Pell to broader workforce and post-secondary strategies. So some states are thinking about credential quality, workforce data, stackability, and other existing funding programs. So for Kentucky, really what I'd say is the broader point here is that states aren't approaching this all the same way. Some are taking narrow implementation approaches, while others are using Workforce Pell as a part of a broader conversation about workforce credentials and post-secondary alignment. I know that's a lot. It's a very complicated program. So I'll stop here. I'm happy to answer a handful of questions if there is time. And otherwise, thank you again for letting me be here and the opportunity to speak about this.
Well, Autumn, thank you for your presentation. I know Autumn has a conflict, is going to have to leave us. I do have a couple of questions. Any of the other members have any questions for us? My first question, Autumn, I know that US Ed has been working on the rulemaking process. Have they finalized the rulemaking process for Workforce Pell as of yet?
Yes, they have finalized it since we met a couple of weeks ago. They have finalized that. That's where the 25 to 49% came from registered apprenticeships and a couple other small things. That they're all finalized now.
Okay. And I'm aware of this, but just for clarification, any monies that a student receives through Workforce Pell does count against their lifetime Pell grant eligibility. Is that correct?
That is correct. It also starts the lifetime Pell clock.
Okay. And I guess I've been reading that there's concerns that with the expansion of Pell, that there may be funding shortfalls. Can you give some insight on that and where the federal government may be going to rectify that?
Yeah, there have been some conversations around shortfall according to Pell. I don't know the numbers quite off the top of my head. I'd be happy to get those back to you. But those are conversations about if Workforce Pell is approached by states. There's also a conversation around what that looks like for general Pell. I'm not sure what the plan is from the department at this point.
Thank you. We do have a question from Representative Bratcher.
Yes, thank you for the information. And this kind of follows up on what Chairman Tipton was asking was how many students receive Pell and how is this going to affect new students? Is it going to be a decrease or increase in the people eligible for Pell?
Absolutely. I'm not sure off the top of my head how many students receive Pell. The idea is that this is coming from the same funding. It's still a quasi-entitlement, so it should not affect how many students get Pell, but if the funding, there's a funding shortfall, obviously that will be a part of the conversation.
Thank you, Chair.
I don't see any other members having questions. Autumn, thank you for your presentation. I know you have another engagement you have to get to, and we'll see you soon. Next on our agenda, we have representatives from the Education and Labor Cabinet, Michael Yodom, Commissioner, and Alisher. I never can get this right. Alisher's here. I'll just say that. Who's with the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board. I know we met by Zoom during session, had some initial conversations. Can I get both of you to raise your right hand real quick? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? So please proceed and let us know the progress that Kentucky has made on implementing Workforce Pell.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Chair Tipton. Some of the information here, we will reiterate what NCSL has provided, but I think it's relevant to this topic. But my name is Alisher Barikinoff. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board. I'm joined by Department of Workforce Development Commissioner Mike Yoder. And just so you all know, Kentucky is getting ready for Workforce Pell. You know, Team Kentucky is focused on education and workforce development, and Workforce Pell creates another avenue for Kentuckians to achieve in-demand skills, increase wages, and find good jobs in the Commonwealth. Next slide, please. So to reiterate some of the things that were described, just want to make sure you guys know the U.S. Congress created Workforce Pell as an expansion of the federal Pell Grant. The program is administered by the U.S. Department of Education.
Alisher, do you all have slides?
We do. We're sharing them here.
They're not showing up on the screen.
How do I get them from here to there?
We'll get somebody down there to help you with that. This is not the first time this has happened. We're having technical difficulties. The members were presented with your slides in our meeting materials, but if you want to go ahead and we'll go forward.
Sounds good. So we're on slide 2 of this presentation. The U.S. Congress created Workforce Pell as an expansion of the federal Pell Grant. The program is administered by U.S. Department of Education and will go into effect July 1, 2026. The federal final rule regarding the program was issued on May 19th by U.S. Department of Education. The federal law gives authority to governors to establish state guidelines that are reflective of their state's economic needs. These guidelines are to be established in consultation with their state workforce development boards. Here in the Commonwealth, it's the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board. Federal law also requires governors to appoint business, labor, nonprofit, and education leaders to serve on this board. So next slide, which is, if you guys have it in front of you, some specifics about the program there that are a must to be eligible for Workforce Pell. The program must be offered by Title IV post-secondary institutions, which means college, university, or training providers must be eligible to serve students receiving federal financial aid. The program must be minimum of 8 weeks, but less than 15 weeks. So the instruction has to be between 8 and 14 weeks. The program must achieve 70% completion rate, and more importantly, a 70% job placement rate. It must also result in credentials that are stackable, meaning credit bearing or an articulation agreement is in place for other credentials, and it also must be portable, meaning more than one employer recognizes it as a value in the hiring process. The program must offer training in jobs that are in demand, high wage, or high skill. In addition, the program must have positive value added earnings, which means that the median wage for program completers minus 150% of the federal poverty line must be higher than the total published cost of tuition and fees. Here in the Commonwealth, 150% of the federal poverty line is roughly $24,000. Our next steps for the Commonwealth, the executive branch will be filing a regulation that are reflective of the final rule released by the U.S. Department of Education on May 19th, and most importantly, will be ready for implementation by July 1, 2026. In conclusion, I just want to thank the Interim Education Committee for having us, and also to members that are also KWIB members, Senator Higdon, Representative McCool. Thank you all for serving on the KWIB and on this committee. And that concludes our presentation, and open to any questions.
Sure. I'll start off. I know there are several requirements that are part of the legislation, the 70/70 rule, all the data. And I know some states are really scrambling to get their data. And of course, we're very fortunate to have KY Stats here. Do you all feel like we have the appropriate procedures in place and the resources to collect the data that we'll need to determine eligibility rules going forward?
I think that's a great question. I think you are correct. We are in a really good position from having Kentucky Center for Statistics present, and we will, as we're reviewing the final rule published just a couple weeks ago, we'll make sure all that is incorporated in the regulation.
I have one other question. If any other members have questions, please let staff know. But as we roll out on July 1st, how many programs have you identified? Could you give us an idea what type of programs we're going to start off with here in Kentucky?
I think that is probably best suited for our post-secondary partners.
Okay, they'll be up next.
Thank you.
All right. Any other members have questions? Seeing none, thank you all for being here. Please give Secretary Link her best regards. All right. Next, we have our representatives from the Kentucky Community Technical College System who are going to be implementing this and making this come forward. We have Dr. Quarles, Alicia Crouch, Associate Vice President for Research and Policy Analyst, and Jesse Shook, Vice President for Workforce and Economic Development. If everyone will please identify yourself for the record, and then I'll administer the oath.
Ryan Quarles, President of KCTCS.
Jesse Shook, Vice President of Workforce and Economic Development at KCTCS.
Alicia Crouch, Associate Vice President, Office of Research and Policy.
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
I do.
Please proceed with your presentation.
All right, thank you, Chairman Tipton, Vice Chairman West, Chairman Lewis. Happy birthday. Just our first slide as we get it up, just a small recap of where we're at as a system. Our enrollment is right at 120,000 students over the past academic year. We're on the heels of 25 plus graduation ceremonies. We actually have a graduation ceremony this Friday if anyone wants to attend. A lot of student success out there, and we're going to graduate well over 20,000 students this spring semester. 74% of our students walk across stage with zero student loan debt. 74% of our students graduate with no student loan debt, and the workforce Pell is going to only predictably make it more affordable for our students. And just one last area of cheers here is that our organization just reached an all-time record high with our graduation rate, well over 17, 18% above the national average for community and technical colleges.
I'm not seeing our slide deck loaded here.
As they're working, if you don't mind, Chair, I'll continue. We just want to say a special thank you to our congressional delegation for including Workforce Pell. The community colleges have been advocating for this well over a decade, so we were thrilled that it was incorporated with OB3 legislation last year. And as you all know, this is great public policy because a lot of our students, we have a 2-year associate's degree, but a lot of our students are there for a lot shorter periods of time. And so as you saw, this program is for short-term programs. A lot of our programs, we believe, are going to naturally overlap with that, but there's a lot of work to do. Next slide, please. Yep. Just really quickly here, to kind of let you know, this is just one of several pots that we are using to help fund and make our programs affordable. Also focusing on high quality programs as well. So just to let you know where we're at, previous slide if you don't mind. Now this is just one pot of money, so we're really appreciative of you as a General Assembly for the investments you made this past spring, particularly with financial aid, but also the Trains program, which you increased, and also your commitment to work-ready scholarships. Next slide, please. As you know and have heard, this has been a process that literally been a year in the making. Last year, we started an internal working group at KCTCS looking at Workforce Pell as a great piece of public policy and an opportunity for our students as well. And so prior to getting to where we're at today, we included a lot of our faculty and staff with getting us ready for this. Other states are doing that as well. But a big thing is that we got to communicate, make sure that folks know about this, including our students. We want to make sure that we had broad support and input by engaging stakeholders and making sure we're leading up to that May 18th, 19th final rule determination last month. So we didn't know exactly where they're going to land in the rules, but we were ready to be prepared for that. Next slide. As you can see, you all passed Senate Bill 249 this past spring. Been working with the governor's task force, KWIB, and of course CPE to make sure that we're getting it right here. We also were checking in on what other states were doing to make sure that we weren't missing any stones that need to be unturned. And so I think we're in pretty good shape for implementation on July 1st. Next slide, please. As you can tell, there's additional steps. This just kind of gives you a visualization about where we're at, from internal work groups to eligibility, working through KWEB, and then eventually the governor's recommendations to KDE. And I was just in D.C. last month, met with the Deputy Secretary of Education, and even she was asking what programs. I want to know what programs you have. And so on slide 7, we'll get there in a second, we'll show you what we think will be eligible. But the goal here is to make sure that our programs are not just eligible, but they are going to meet those accountability standards. I think that's the new normal in higher education, is accountability. Taxpayers make the investment. They want to make sure that our programs are relevant and also meet the workforce demands of Kentucky, and also that our programs are leading to job opportunities for our graduates. And I think that's a fair assessment. So we're focusing on high quality, sustainable workforce opportunities rather than maximizing the programs we already have or trying to shoehorn them in so they're eligible. For example, we are the state's largest provider of CDLs. You know, come and get your big rig truck driver's license with us. Right now, that doesn't fit in the Workforce Pell. We think other states may have said, well, we're going to lengthen that program. Right now, you can get a CDL license in 4 weeks. That does not squarely fit in to the federal mandates of the Workforce Pell. Now, there may be some other stackable credentials that we could eventually create that pathway. But as Autumn mentioned earlier, the programs have to be in existence for well over a year. So that prevents post-secondary institutions from standing up unpredictable and unproven programs. I think that was a wise piece of public policy. But we're just making sure that we're proactive, we're coordinated across all of our higher education partners, and also analyzing how this is going to affect the financial aid packages for our 120,000 plus students. Next slide. These are our guiding principles before we get to the big reveal here next. Is that we want to make sure that our programs are obviously in the best interest of our students, our employers, which we're working with every day across Kentucky. At last count, we're working with about 3,000 businesses at KCTCS any given year. And also make sure that we're ready for the federal framework. So you all been asking, federal delegation's been asking, U.S. Department of Education's been asking. The next slide, these are the programs, not all 41, but these are just kind of a menu, I guess you could say, of programs that we think will be eligible for our students. Heavy emphasis on automotive and industrial maintenance, supply chain specialists, industrial electricians, medical technicians, 3D printing, automotive and robotics technicians as well. These are programs that we know that our students are gaining currently, that employers are asking for in the final product before they walk across stage with us. And so I just want to say a special thank you to everyone that's been involved, including KWIB, Alice Shear, CPE. Special thanks to soon-to-be Dr. Shook here for getting us prepared, and Dr. Crouch as well to help us out understanding the numbers behind Workforce Pell. So with that, I know you have a jam-packed presentation today. That concludes our remarks. Thank you for what you do, and if you want to attend some more graduation ceremonies, let me know.
Thank you, Dr. Quarles. Thank you all for your presentation. I thought it was good to orient the members on what's coming with Workforce Pell. It is a new program, and I think it has a lot of possibilities. Any idea on how many students this could impact in the first year?
Predicting that question, I got Dr. Crouch with me, but right now we have 40,000 students utilizing Workforce Pell. So we can only imagine that's probably the floor, and it'll increase. We don't know yet, but for a more precise answer, Dr. Crouch.
Just Alicia, no doctorate. So we'll get back to you on this. So we do have the 40,000 students that get Pell right now, and we do have quite a few of these students enrolled in these embedded certificate programs. And so we anticipate through Workforce Pell providing these opportunities to more students.
Okay, thank you. Any members have any questions at this? Senator Williams, go ahead.
Just real quick, are you required to have a high school diploma under these rulemakings to go to that, or can you enter it without one?
Yes, you're required to have a high school diploma, and actually with Workforce Pell, it opens up Pell for the first time to people who already have a bachelor's degree to come back and get a short-term certificate.
Thank you.
That is a good point for people who want to get retrained or reskilled. Yeah, Representative Stalker has a question.
Just to elaborate on that previous question, is this program also open to individuals who didn't get a high school diploma but instead obtained a GED?
Yes, it is eligible for people who obtain a GED.
Thank you.
And just for your information, at last count, KCTCS is facilitating roughly 50% of all GEDs in Kentucky. So this is going to be a natural way for us to say, get the GED first, get you into a short-term, high-demand, high-wage credential.
Very good. Any other members have questions? If not, thank you for being here. I'm sure this is a topic we will revisit in the future. Next, we're going to talk about extension. I'm sure everyone here, his life has been touched by extension, so if our presenters could come forward from the University of Kentucky and Kentucky State University. Go ahead. We have 2 land-grant institutions in Kentucky that offer extension programs. Good to have everybody here. We may need to pull up some extra chairs if need be. We've had to do that before. But if everybody will introduce yourself for the record, and then I will administer the oath and we can proceed.
Laura Stevenson, Dean of the College of Agriculture at University of Kentucky.
Marcus Bernard, Dean for the College of Agriculture, Health and Natural Resources at Kentucky State University.
Okay.
Jennifer Hunter, Associate Dean and Director of Extension, University of Kentucky.
All right.
I'm Terrell Cahan, Associate Extension Administrator, Kentucky State University.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Well, it's glad to please.
Well, good morning, and thank you, committee co-chairs and legislators. We are excited about the opportunity to share the mission and impact of Extension across Kentucky. Kentucky is blessed to have a strong and vibrant extension system serving communities across the state. This strength comes from the expertise of our university faculty and staff who develop research-based training and educational resources that are developed locally and delivered locally by extension agents at every county. To support this work, you see our map. Our system is organized into 3 regions and 24 areas, allowing us to coordinate effectively and respond to local needs. A key reason for the success of our extension system is its funding structure, which aligns resources with the needs of our state and counties. We operate under a 3-part funding model that includes federal, state, and county support. Federal capacity funding provided through the Smith-Lever and Hatch Acts support our research and extension missions. However, this federal funding has remained flat for more than 20 years. At the state level, dedicated funding supports cooperative extension, regulatory services, the Kentucky Small Business Development Center, and the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab. Together, these programs help translate research into practical solutions, address local and statewide challenges, and prepare the next generation of leaders, producers, and business entrepreneurs. At the local level, counties can invest in extension through a dedicated tax or appropriations through the fiscal court. These funds support county-based personnel, programs, and facilities based on local priorities set by the County Extension District Board and the county leadership. We partner with counties at University of Kentucky to cost share at least 2 extension agents in each county with the option for communities to expand investment based on their needs. Because of this collaborative funding model, Extension remains a strong educational partner, working alongside our communities to co-create solutions across the Commonwealth.
Extension has a unique capacity to serve because it connects university expertise directly with community needs. As a land-grant institution, our role is to translate research into practical solutions that improves the lives of Kentuckians. Not everyone in the state of Kentucky can attend the University of Kentucky, but through Extension, we can take the university to the people across the Commonwealth. What makes Extension different is our ability to work across multiple sectors simultaneously: agriculture, youth development, family well-being, community leadership, and economic development. We also have the ability to engage Kentuckians throughout every stage of life, from early childhood education and youth leadership development to workforce preparation, business development, and healthy aging initiatives. This combination of university expertise, trusted community relationships, and broad educational reach creates a system uniquely positioned to address both current challenges and future opportunities facing the Commonwealth. Extension's work is organized around 3 broad areas that are critical to Kentucky's future. We strengthen agriculture and natural resources by helping producers make informed decisions, improve productivity, and adopt research-based practices. We improve health and well-being by providing education that supports healthier families, stronger financial futures, food security, and improved quality of life. And we engage communities through leadership development, economic opportunity, community planning, and local problem-solving efforts. These priorities reflect issues that matter to Kentuckians every day, and they demonstrate how Extension serves as a bridge between university knowledge and community impact. Whether the challenge is supporting agricultural competitiveness, preparing future leaders, strengthening families, or helping communities respond to change, Extension provides educational solutions grounded in research and delivered through trusted relationships. The examples shown here illustrate the diversity of Extension's educational portfolio. Programs range from agricultural certifications and beginning farmer education to financial recovery programs, suicide prevention training, food entrepreneurship initiatives, and community and leadership development. What is important is not simply the number of programs that we offer, but the ability to respond to issues that communities identify as priorities. As needs evolve, Extension evolves alongside them, ensuring that educational programming remains relevant, practical, and responsive to Kentucky families, producers, businesses, and communities. May have missed a slide here. There we go. Many of Extension's most important investments begin long before a child enters a classroom. Programs such as Snack Club, LEAP, and Laugh and Learn provide parents and caregivers with practical tools and support healthy development, literacy, nutrition, and school readiness. Research consistently demonstrates that early childhood experiences influence long-term educational achievement, health outcomes, and workforce success. By supporting families during these formative years, Extension helps create strong foundations for learning while reinforcing the skills and habits that contribute to lifelong success. Kentucky 4-H is built upon a positive youth development model that focuses on helping young people reach their full potential. The goal is not simply to teach a subject matter area. The goal is to help young people develop leadership, communication, decision-making, and problem-solving skills through hands-on experiences. Whether youth are participating in a club, attending camp, presenting a speech, conducting a science project, or serving their community, they are developing competencies that will benefit them throughout their lives. These experiences help young people build confidence, resilience, and a sense of responsibility while preparing them to become engaged citizens, community leaders, and productive members of Kentucky's workforce. One of the greatest strengths of Kentucky 4-H is its partnership with schools across the Commonwealth. Today, Kentucky 4-H partners with 316 school districts, both public and private, and engages nearly 148,000 students through school-based programming each year. Those partnerships allow us to extend learning beyond traditional classroom instruction by providing opportunities for leadership development, civic engagement, STEM exploration, agricultural literacy, and career awareness. Combined with clubs, camps, and community-based programming, Kentucky 4-H reaches more than 208,000 youth annually. This partnership model allows Extension to support educators while ensuring that students across Kentucky have access to meaningful educational experiences that prepare them for future success. The impact of Kentucky 4-H can be seen not only in participation numbers, but in measurable outcomes. 84% of Kentucky 4-H members report that 4-H had a moderate to extreme influence on their college and career readiness. More than 10,000 youth currently serve in leadership positions, and nearly 17,000 participate in service learning projects that strengthen communities across the Commonwealth. These experiences help young people develop the communication, leadership, and teamwork skills that are increasingly important for success in higher education, the workforce, and civic life. Just as importantly, these opportunities allow young people to see themselves as leaders and contributors within their communities, often at an age when those experiences can have lasting impact on future educational and career choices. Preparing youth for future careers is an increasingly important component of Extension programming. Programs such as 4-H Future Ready introduces students to career pathways while helping them understand the skills and experiences employers seek. Forestry Works provides opportunities for students to earn industry-recognized certifications and gain exposure to Kentucky's 4-H forest product sector. Extension internships offer college students hands-on professional experiences that strengthen leadership, communication, and workforce competencies. Together, these programs help connect education with employment opportunities while supporting Kentucky's long-term workforce needs. Kentucky 4-H has established a bold vision for the future. By 2030, 1 million young people will learn and practice leadership, communication, and civic engagement skills through 4-H experiences. This vision recognizes that success requires more than academic achievement alone. Young people must be prepared to communicate effectively, collaborate with others, solve problems, and contribute positively to their communities. Through Extension and 4-H, Kentucky is helping develop those skills at scale. The youth we engage today will become tomorrow's business owners, educators, healthcare professionals, agricultural leaders, public servants, and community leaders. When we invest in youth development, we're investing in Kentucky's future workforce, future civic leaders, and future economic prosperity. The benefits extend far beyond individual participants and contribute to stronger communities and a stronger Commonwealth. Before concluding, I want to recognize the partnership between Kentucky's two land-grant institutions. The University of Kentucky and Kentucky State University each bring unique expertise and strength that help us better serve communities across the Commonwealth. Through collaboration, we work to ensure that educational programming reaches communities of varying sizes and needs across the Commonwealth while leveraging the strengths of both institutions. Together, we share a commitment to improving lives through education, research, and engagement. At this time, I will transition to our colleagues from Kentucky State University, who will share more about their extension program and impact across Kentucky.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter. Good morning, committee chairs, co-chairs, and legislators. I appreciate the opportunity to provide you an update on Kentucky State University's Cooperative Extension Program. As you have heard from our colleagues at the University of Kentucky, Extension plays a vital role in translating university knowledge into practical solutions that improve the lives of Kentuckians. Kentucky State University is proud to work with Dean Stevenson and Dr. Hunter and the UK team in Cooperative Extension. Our institutions work collaboratively, but we bring both unique and distinct strengths and areas of emphasis that allow us to collectively serve a broader range of communities and audiences across the Commonwealth. Today, we will briefly share our mission, strategic priorities, funding structure, and examples of impact. So Kentucky State University's Cooperative Extension Program delivers research-based education and technical assistance to communities, families, farmers, and youth throughout Kentucky. Our work is organized around 4 core program areas: agriculture and natural resources, family and consumer sciences, 4-H youth development, and community resource development. Through these program areas, we help producers improve agricultural productivity, support healthy families and communities, prepare young people for future success, and strengthen local leadership and economic opportunity. As Kentucky's 1890 land-grant institution and newly designated Polytechnic University, our approach is rooted in applied learning and community engagement. This extension education often takes place outside the traditional classroom, on farms, in schools, in community centers, and through hands-on demonstrations that help people solve real-world problems. While we serve many of the same broad issue areas, our extension partners serve. Kentucky State University brings a unique emphasis on the statewide system. We focus significant attention on small-scale, beginning and limited resource producers, while also expanding opportunities for youth, families, and community organizations throughout Kentucky. This emphasis helps to ensure that populations that may not traditionally access extension services remain connected to research-based educational opportunities. Another distinction of Kentucky State University's model is our strategic deployment approach. Rather than attempting to maintain a physical presence everywhere, all 120 counties, we strategically position expertise where it can create the greatest impact while maintaining statewide reach through the specialist, regional programming, partnerships, and technology. This allows us to respond flexibly to emerging needs, pursue regional opportunities, and complement the county-based extension structure already established throughout Kentucky. In short, yes, our direct presence may be targeted, but our service is statewide. We've adopted 3 priorities in our new strategic plan. First, strengthening the connection between extension and research to accelerate the delivery of evidence-based solutions to Kentucky communities. Second, improving organizational systems, evaluation, technology, and accountability to maximize effectiveness and stewardship of public resources. Third, increasing public awareness, partnerships, and place-based outreach so that more Kentuckians can benefit from extension programming. Together, these priorities position us to expand our impact while remaining responsive to community needs. Capacity funding, our foundation for impact. Like all extension systems, our work begins with this capacity funding. Federal and state matching funds provide the personnel, infrastructure, and organizational foundation that make extension possible. These foundational investments allow us to leverage competitive grants, philanthropic support, county partnerships, and other resources that expand programming in youth development, agriculture, community development, and family well-being. We are also intentionally pursuing new funding opportunities and strategic partnerships to further expand our funding portfolio. By leveraging our core capacity funds, we are able to compete for additional federal grants, private investments, and philanthropic support that expand our reach, strengthen our programs, and allow us to serve more Kentuckians. Our goal is to maximize the return on every public dollar invested in extension, while continuing to grow our ability to respond to emerging needs across the Commonwealth. Simply put, capacity funding is not just another funding resource. It is the catalyst that enables us to attract additional resources and increase our reach and impact across Kentucky. At this point, I will turn the presentation over to my Associate Extension Administrator, Dr. Cahan, to highlight a few examples of that impact in extension.
Thank you, Dr. Bernard. In calendar year 2025 alone, Kentucky State University Extension reached more than 234,000 direct contacts across the Commonwealth, representing a 47% increase over the previous year. That reach translates into meaningful impact. Through our youth development programs, thousands of young people receive education and training in civic engagement, STEM, healthy living, financial literacy, leadership, and workforce readiness. We also continue to strengthen conservation and environmental education across Kentucky through certification and professional development programs that equip teachers, extension professionals, and public sector partners with the knowledge and tools needed to educate future generations. Beyond educational programming, our partnership with the Kentucky Agricultural Development Board has helped invest more than $5 million into 116 counties through the Small Farm Grant Program since 2012. This helps producers strengthen and grow their operations. These results reflect not only significant growth, but also our intentional efforts to expand access, increase impact, and respond to community needs across the Commonwealth. They are also made possible through the strong partnerships we have built and the additional funding we have successfully leveraged to extend the reach of our core extension resources. Together, these investments and collaborations allow Kentucky State University Extension to serve more people, deliver more programs, and create greater impact throughout Kentucky. Those partnerships and investments come to life through programs that create opportunities for youth, strengthen workforce development, and increase awareness of agricultural careers. One example is Kentucky State University's annual Ag Roundup, which introduced nearly 4,000 participants, including more than 1,000 students for 25 schools across central Kentucky, to agricultural career pathways through hands-on learning experiences. For adult learners, our Urban Growers program in Louisville provides a 4-month training experience focused on production agriculture and entrepreneurship, helping participants develop the knowledge and skills needed to pursue agricultural enterprises and strengthen local food systems. We're also working to connect young people with emerging areas of agriculture through projects such as the Tates Creek Middle School Greenhouse Initiative. In partnership with Farm Credit Mid-America, we helped establish a greenhouse and outdoor classroom where students gain exposure to controlled environment agriculture and STEM-related learning opportunities. Together, these programs demonstrate how Extension connects education, workforce development, and community engagement to prepare Kentuckians for future opportunities. Building on those efforts, Kentucky State University Extension is also investing in the next generation of agricultural and community leaders through our innovative youth and workforce development initiatives. This summer, Kentucky State University will host more than 100 youth from 7 other 1890 land-grant institutions through the Youth Innovators Empowering Agriculture Across America, or YEA Summer Camp. Participants will be exposed to agricultural and STEM career pathways while developing leadership, teamwork, and workforce readiness skills that will help prepare them for future educational and professional opportunities. At the same time, we're creating pathways into high-demand careers through initiatives such as the Urban Green Careers Training Program. In partnership with Louisville Grows and Blueprint 502, this program prepares Jefferson County residents for careers in landscaping, urban forestry, and urban agriculture. So whether we're engaging youth, students, or adult learners, our goal is the same: to connect Kentuckians with knowledge, skills, and opportunities that strengthen individuals, communities, and Kentucky's future workforce. Supporting small farms and rural communities also remains central to our mission. Our long-running Third Thursday Thing and Beef Cattle Wednesday programs provide recurring educational opportunities that connect producers with research-based information, hands-on demonstrations, and peer learning networks. To expand access and strengthen our statewide reach, we have recently begun hosting these educational events in communities across Kentucky. Last month, we partnered with the Hardin County Cooperative Extension Office to host a small-scale poultry workshop in Elizabethtown. Upcoming programs include a small ruminant field day in Martin County and an urban agriculture session in Jefferson County. Our Small Farms Conference, East Kentucky Style, brings producers together annually in Whitley County to learn practical strategies tailored to the needs and opportunities of Eastern Kentucky agriculture. Programs such as these help producers make informed decisions, adopt new practices, and strengthen the long-term viability of their operations. They also reflect our commitment to meeting producers where they are and delivering practical, needs-based education throughout the Commonwealth. In closing, Kentucky State University Cooperative Extension remains committed to delivering practical, research-based education that strengthens communities, expands participation, and maximizes public investments through strategic partnerships and leveraged funding. As part of Kentucky's cooperative extension system, we value our partnership with the University of Kentucky and work collaboratively to ensure our efforts are complementary rather than duplicative. Our unique contributions, including our support for small-scale agriculture, urban communities, and workforce-focused initiatives, help broaden the reach and impact of extension across the Commonwealth. We appreciate the committee's support and will be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank everyone for your presentation. Like I said before, I'm sure everyone in this room has been touched by extension at some point in their life. Dr. Hunter, Dean Stevenson, I won't tell you how long ago I was on the state 4-H dairy judging team, but that was a long time ago. Still remember that valuable experience. Dean Stevenson, in your presentation, you talked about the county extension district boards. That some of them have tax base, some of them are. Do you know the breakdown of how many county boards actually have a tax base versus receive support from their fiscal court?
We have 4 that receive support from their fiscal court through appropriations, and 116 that receive have a tax base.
Okay. Now, in these counties, of course, Dr. Bernard, how many actual counties does KSU have a presence in?
About 70.
Okay. So my point comes back to, does the Extension District Board work with both universities in those situations, or is there a separate process? How does that work?
Yes, the board does work with both universities. Yes.
Okay. One follow-up, Dean Bernard. Of course, you mentioned Senate Bill 185, the change in the mission for KSU. Is that going to have an impact on your extension program and the services you provide to the state?
It will not have a negative impact. It will have a positive impact. Okay. It reinforces the work we've been doing.
Okay. We do have some members with questions. Representative Emily Callaway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for your presentation. Thank you for the work, especially specifically, obviously, Louisville and Jefferson County. That was interesting to hear some more specifics about. I'm very familiar with the some of the urban growers program and reaching of the urban community to encourage farming within that area. So really appreciate that. And what I would like to hear, how are we hearing, I'd like to say success stories. What's the follow-up? And, you know, the allocating of funds, is there some accountability there? And again, I like to say the success stories, like how are we hearing back from what we've invested in? What, you know, what are we seeing? So is there something implemented so that we can see that?
Yes, the success stories are in the follow-up where, for example, our community resource development program area works with the urban growers in the urban grower certificate program. And the goal is, of course, to have measurable successes and impacts. And so through that follow-up with the growers that are certified and bringing them back in each cohort to talk to new adults that are going through the program.
Okay. Yeah, if I could add just a little bit on that. So for the Urban Grower Program, we just wrapped up our first cohort. And so that cohort, some of those folks, we've connected them to other organizations around Louisville to garner additional training. And then we've also had a few of them come back for that entrepreneurship piece. Some of them are going through some entrepreneurship training with our state specialists for entrepreneurship. We have just launched the second cohort, and that's another group of 30. What was exciting for us was that we had over 80 applications for this cohort. So we had a kind of competitive process that we didn't expect as far as responses to it. So to see it, the ability to expand the interest in it, people were actually approaching me, actually down in Hopkinsville. I was in Hopkinsville. Someone's like, I've heard about the program, make sure you put in a good word for me. So it's gaining attention, and we expect that continue for us to continue training and partnering with others.
And I'll speak broadly about our success stories and our accountability and our expectations, that we pride ourselves through Extension to be accountable to local community needs, that we walk with our agents and our faculty on campus through local needs assessment, county plans of work, and that we have the expectation that our agents are directly meeting those local needs. So therefore, programming is evaluated, and those successes are reported back at the county level through a report to the people. So each of our 120 county offices on an annual basis will present a report to the people that's available broadly locally. At the state level, we're certainly accountable here as well as at the federal level. And so those success stories come back up, coupled with our faculty and staff on campus with extension appointments to report both at the state and nationally into impact databases.
Next, we have Representative Camiel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for your presentation. And I don't really have a question. I just want to say that I appreciate everything that you're doing, and specifically talking about the greenhouse at Tates Creek Middle School. what the students have done there and what you have helped them learn is incredible, from their aquaponics, traditional gardening, their chickens. Everything that they have done is unbelievable. And I think the more opportunities that we give to young people as they are matriculating through K through 12, I think these are opportunities that will absolutely help move Kentucky forward in ways that we probably hadn't seen before, because I don't think we've been this engaged with young kids to such a great degree. So I really want to thank you for that. And if people have not stopped by Tates Creek Middle School to see their greenhouse and see what they're doing, their strawberries are ripe. I highly recommend going, but thank you for what you all do.
Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, just want to congratulate you on the confidence level I think each of our counties have on extension services. It's second to none, truly. The question I have is your shared funding model, the three areas. Could you give me some idea on the breakdown of the percentages that come from federal, county, all others?
Totally from memory. So we receive roughly $10 million from the federal, $40 million, and that includes their research from mandated, all those mandated programs. And then at the county level, it's about 45% of our budget. So that county funding has become more and more important as they decide on their local needs and their decision for investment. So that's rough.
I'd say that it is, but you mentioned that federal really hasn't been increased in 20 years, I believe. At its zenith, what percentage do you think they were accounting for total funding?
When they first began?
Yes.
It was closer to 1-to-1 match, so 50%. But now it's less than 10.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
See no more questions. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for your presentation. All right. Next on our agenda are our representatives from Kentucky Department of Education. I've got a two-part program today. We're going to start off with the Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies. I think everybody knows the routine here by now. So after you get settled, please identify yourself for the record, and I'll administer the oath. Make sure that green light's on.
Good afternoon. I am Sarah Medley. I'm a policy advisor for the Kentucky Department of Education.
Mickey Marinelli, Chief Academic Officer at the KDE.
Crystal Rowland, Director of Academic Program Standards at the Department of Education.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tipton. And we are so happy to be here today with members of the committee. And thank you to the co-chairs for allowing us this space and time. To begin, I wanted to frame us around our guiding statute and regulation. So you can see there, KRS 158.6453 guides all of our standards revision work. And so the KDE is required to implement a process for reviewing Kentucky's academic standards every 6 years and subsequently present those recommendations, public feedback to you as the Interim Joint Committee on Education. The regulation there, 704 KR 8060, is for the required academic standards for social studies, and our document incorporated by reference is the actual CAS for social studies, Kentucky Academic Standards, as we would say. And I'm going to turn it over now to Crystal Rowland, who is the Director of the Division of Program Standards and facilitates and leads this work in the Office of Teaching and Learning.
As Mickey mentioned, KRS 158.6453 established the development of our Kentucky academic standards, as well as established that review and revision period of every 6 years thereafter once they're established. The statute further requires standards to satisfy the criteria seen here, and the standards writers anchored their work in these expectations for Kentucky standards. The graphic pictured here outlines the process that is required in the statute. In alignment, the CAS for Social Studies was entirely conceived and written by teams of Kentucky educators. The Social Studies Advisory Panel, or AP, was composed of 18 teachers, 3 public post-secondary professors, and 3 community members. The function of the AP was to review and revise the standards and make recommended changes to a review committee. The Social Studies Review Committee, or RC, was composed of 6 teachers, 2 post-secondary professors, and 2 community members. And the RC functions as they review those recommendations from the advisory panel, and then they make recommended revisions to replace or revise existing standards. The team of standards writers was selected based on their expertise in the area of social studies, including those with specialty in the disciplines of social studies. When choosing writers, the selection committee considers statewide representation for public elementary, middle school, and high school teachers, as well as higher education institutions and community members. The current cast for social studies was released for a 30-day public comment period. The advisory panel and review committee reviewed the public feedback and responded with recommended revisions. Those revised standards were released for an additional 30-day public comment period, and then they reconvened to make final recommendations in response to that feedback. And we are in the second row, that final box, presenting those recommendations to you today. The standards review timeline is on the screen here. So it began in February of 2025 with an application that was disseminated broadly for our teachers to apply to be on the advisory panel and the review committee. We had a public comment survey that was out on the current cast in March of 2025. The panels met to review the public feedback and to make recommended changes. And then those went out for another public comment period, June of 2025. And then they reconvened in September and February. And we are up to date for June of this year, representing those to you today. So the standards writers drafted a vision statement, and those highlights are on the screen here. But really, the standards were designed to give students real opportunities to question, create, and collaborate as they think about the future. The goal is for students to engage with social studies disciplinary concepts and practices of civics, economics, geography, and history. Across all grades, the focus is on critical thinking, evaluating sources, and communicating clearly, so students are prepared for informed civic participation. The current cast for social studies was open for public comment for 30 days. We received a total of 390 responses, and feedback was received by a range of stakeholders that's represented here on the screen. For each of the standards, respondents were asked to determine keep as is or revise with a prompt to write in their comments regarding revision. The standards writers responded directly to feedback by improving grade level appropriateness, expanding clarification guidance, and strengthening implementation supports in both the front matter and grade level overviews. As a result, the standards are clearer, more usable, and better aligned to educator needs. This slide highlights general revisions to the standards document, including design features that enhance usability, as well as expand clarification guidance around questioning, and an updated high school grade band overview to highlight the organization of the standards around the disciplines of civics, economics, geography, and history. And this is to emphasize the importance of teaching those social studies disciplinary strands in unison rather than in isolation. You do have access to a comprehensive list of changes to standards that should be in your materials. There is a Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies at-a-glance document, and so that's a full list of the changes. But of note, I would just elevate, revisions were made to support our youngest learners. So for example, the standards writers reduced the number of sources for using evidence from 2 or more to 1 or 2 for grade 1 and kindergarten students. Additionally, 2 standards were removed and merged with other standards in grades 5 and 6 to increase clarity and reduce redundancy. In the second round of public comment, over 175 responses were received. 94% of standards were accepted as is, and this high acceptance rate reflects the intentional work of the standards writers. The standards writers reconvened to review the remaining 6% of standards and provide revisions as needed to complete that draft cast of social studies that's available in the digital binder. On the screen, you can see an example standard for high school civics. In the left column, you'll see the disciplinary strand followed by the concept and practice title. In the middle column includes the standard, which describes what students should know and be able to do. And the right column includes the disciplinary clarification statement that includes ideas and content to help teachers better understand the expectations of the standard.
And Chair, at this time, we're happy to address any questions the committee may have.
Thank you for your presentation. I do have a question to start off with before we get to members. I think a lot of times a lot of people misunderstand the difference between standards and curriculum. Could you elaborate a little bit about what exactly, how that varies between standards and curriculum?
Absolutely, and I'll start us off, and then Crystal, please add anything that you'd like. So we define the standards, and this is common across all of the front matter for each of those standards documents, as the grade level goals, learning goals for students specific to the grade level, and then sometimes you'll see that per the grade band. So they're the learning goals that are established for each and every child in that particular grade level or grade band. The curriculum, there is local flexibility there, but we are trying to support districts in identifying what we call high quality instructional resources that would be aligned to the standards to support teachers in making the instructional moves for implementing those standards effectively. Is there anything you would add?
Just that the curriculum includes all of the text and materials and resources that students would engage with when carrying out the standards, which is what students should know and be able to do at the end of learning.
We have a question from Senator Rollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, why aren't the standards more locally based? The Commonwealth of Kentucky. Senator Tishner did a word search in the third grade social studies 2022, and the word global was mentioned 199 times. You mentioned redundancy, but that's quite a high number. And one example is the War of 1812 is not mentioned, yet I heard a fact from a gentleman that 64% of Americans killed in the War of 1812 were Kentuckians. And there were other examples that he provided to me, like Lewis and Clark. They're not mentioned. I've got a history book from 1950. Lewis and Clark is mentioned 6 times, them and their expedition. And the expedition was launched from Louisville. And they have history in our county of Boone County. Senator Williams has Big Bone State Park in his district, and there's so much rich history with Big Bone State Park. Bones were requested by U.S. presidents and sent around the world. They're on display in Paris and other places. And Thomas Jefferson had an exhibit of 300 bones in the White House. But just examples like that. I just wonder why we're not more locally. We've got a rich history in Kentucky, but it seems like it's not addressed that much.
And I'll start us off, Senator Rollins. Thank you for the question. There is actually a Kentucky history strand in the CAS for Social Studies, and that is for K-12. So each grade level would have specific Kentucky-specific standards connected to our history. What you're speaking to, it is a balance. There are people, there are places, there are events, there are dates that are very granular that we would expect to see in the curriculum and that you will often find in the disciplinary clarifications, but that can't be included in the specific overarching standards. And so there is an interplay there. A lot of our guidance and professional learning support and implementation will point to the more granular components that you're speaking to that are found in those clarifications versus the actual standards. Is there anything that you would add there?
I would just share our business and community members that served on the standards writers panels included representatives from Kentucky Historical Society as well as the Fraser Museum as well. And so we work hard to make sure that we have representation in those conversations to support the importance of Kentucky history as well.
All right, thanks for that perspective. May I ask a follow-up?
Briefly.
And then on more of the global sense, there's no mention of Israel, like Israel becoming a nation in 1948, or Iran or Iraq. And I think current events are so important to kids. So the things that we're seeing, the kids are seeing, students are seeing in the news right now, why is that not addressed more?
I think it's primarily because our standards are adopted into law every 6 years. And so it would be challenging as things sort of evolve to update those. And so those would live, I think, more comfortably within curriculum where the standards support the foundation of those skills that students would need to really access that information, process it, and discuss it with their peers.
The only thing that I will add to that is that there are strands around questioning, communicating conclusions, and utilizing source information. And so we have professional learning supports that kind of wrap around teacher learning to be able to bring in current events, because you're right. In the early days of our standards review for social studies, we heard from many students and they find the current events most compelling. And so we want them to know both history, but also to be able to make connections and apply and transfer their learning for social studies into those current events. And I think you'll see that in sourcing, in questioning, and in communicating conclusion standards.
Okay, thank you.
I will mention in the meeting materials and in an email that was sent to the members last week, there is a link to the standards. 293 pages of reading at your pleasure. But so I would encourage you to take time to review that to really understand how it breaks down by grade level and what's included in that. Representative Grossel has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. I'm really passionate about civics in particular, and there's this national movement to start civics as early as kindergarten that I'm a big fan of. And so I'm wondering if, I'll say this too, in Lexington, where I represent, we are so blessed to have an organization called Civic Lex that's doing a lot of great civic engagement work for young people. I'd love to see things like that grow all across the state so that young people can be engaged with civics education. How have these standards changed in the realm of civics, or how early does civics education begin in Kentucky? Can you tell me a little bit more?
Yes, I'd be happy to do so. So we have civic standards that are specific in each grade level beginning in kindergarten. And I want to thank members of the committee for moving on that half credit civics requirement. We've had many conversations around the test that was in place, and that does push on civic knowledge and engagement, but we think there is such great potential in the course credit requirement that would allow students to engage in true sort of application of that civic engagement in a way that an isolated testing experience cannot demonstrate. So we're happy to see that in law, and we think that one of our jobs is to capture some of those bright spots so that more and more districts can know what's possible in terms of the student experience. We're working very hard to elevate those stories.
Mickey, I want to briefly follow up on that. Do we know how many districts utilize the test versus the half credit?
We are gathering that now, and that report is due to you, this committee, this fall.
Just looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're very welcome.
Next, we have Senator Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A question about where we are in the process on this, because I know we've had some public review. We've had the committees meet. So I see this is going to be a update for KR 8060.
Yes, sir.
So are we going to see a reg update here in this committee at some point in the future?
Yes, so we still have a few important steps to go. So after our meeting today, we'll be meeting with the Standards Assessment Process Review Committee. We're hoping in around July. And then we'll carry these forward to the Kentucky Board of Education for review in August. And then after that, it will enter the legislative process. And so at that time, you'll have access to not only the revised reg, but the new document incorporated by reference as well.
Okay, so we have between now and a couple of those points, we can actually provide some more detailed throughput as we're looking here. Is there an opportunity for us as well as the public to
Absolutely. There is one more required public comment period after we present to the Kentucky Board of Education, but we welcome your feedback at any point in the process and can take that forward to members of the committee.
Okay, thank you. And I have a few things to comment. If I can just make one final statement, is I went around the world in the 80s and the 90s, and the rest of the world thinks more about Kentucky and the importance of Kentucky to American history than Kentuckians themselves are taught about how important we are. And we were the California of America between 1800 and 1900. So that's one of the things that I hope, not just for Kentucky's strand, but it is a world impact strand, that Kentucky was important. I just don't believe, from talking to kids today, that they get this picture of how important Kentucky is and continue to be for the rest of the world. Thank you.
Next, we have Representative Truitt.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for the presentation. My question is about, I guess, that vertical progression. Is that going to be will there be, I know as a teacher, as an educator, it's so important and so easy and user-friendly when we see what that third grade standard looks like compared to that fourth grade standard, compared to that fifth grade standard. So will your final document have that progression, you think?
Do we know if we can take that back to the committee? I know in the reading and writing document, you have the cells that show the before and,
really nice.
And the after, and it is helpful. And so I think that's more of a technical adjustment that we could have each strand with those progressions. Rep. Tipton, that will add to the page count, but not the information that would live in that document. But Representative Truitt, if not there, I'm also certain in the professional learning that will follow in the getting to know the CAS for social studies, our consultants will ensure that there are PLC activities and discussion protocols to support a look at both what comes before and after, so that teachers and leaders understand that progression.
Thank you. One quick follow-up. It doesn't have to be in the standards, but I would just love to see some sort of document that KDE puts out that shows that crosswalk, or shows, as a teacher, it makes their life so much easier knowing where their kids need to be for the next year.
And there are progressions for each strand within the document.
Thank you.
Our final question this segment is going to come from Senator Titchener.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your hard work on this. A couple of years ago, I was working on a bill in order to strengthen our standards regarding communism. I think it's been a rising threat, and we've not really been teaching it very well, I don't think, which is why it's now a rising threat again, as we see the Democratic Socialist Party gaining more and more popularity and people running for office. And now we have Mayor of New York who's a open socialist. One of the portions that you spoke about in the disciplinary clarifications, I think that's a really important part for teachers to understand the standards. And I was reading through this when I was doing that research, and this part likely doesn't look like it's changed. Now, if you don't mind, I'd just like to read a little bit of it. New ideologies like, this is high school world history, new ideologies like communism stimulated workers and colonized people's movements in the post-World War II era as well, but the horrors of domestic genocide, like that of Ukraine, and mass political oppression like Mao's Cultural Revolution, helped bring about change within these regimes. When I read that and I hear words like stimulated and helped, those are almost positioned in a positive way. And I wonder, as we worked to develop those HQRIs a couple of years ago and make sure we strengthen those, can you help me connect where a disciplinary clarification like this, maybe updated HQRIs to help students really dig down and understand that even using those positive adjectives aren't promoting the ideas of communism?
Words matter, don't they? They do. And so I think that that's where the professional learning supports, the curriculum-based professional learning linked to the standards, will be so critical to understanding the nuance of the intent of that disciplinary clarification versus the desire of a particular standard to promote a particular ideology. That is not the intent there. But those are things that we can bring forward to the committee that we can look at. But any denotation of an instructional resource for social studies as being of high quality would need to ensure, not only from review from the KDE, but from those who are part of the Quality Curriculum Task Force and beyond, that it is ensuring that it helps to eliminate some of that nuance and better support teachers in implementing it effectively.
Okay, thank you.
The chair stands corrected. Chair Petrie has a question.
Thank you, Chair. It's a process question more than anything else. So I'm looking at this slide about standards and assessment review process, and you've got 12 blocks on there, and there's one block, middle right, that says present to the Interim Committee on Education. If a member or members of the General Assembly wanted more involvement in the development of the standards, I'm trying to figure out where that would occur, and the issue I'm seeing is this. With everything that's going on, appreciate all the work that goes on through the process, but there's a report today. I'd like that email link because I was added in very, very late, so I don't have that. Once it's reported in the next few blocks and comes back at some point in time through administrative reg review, that's a very limited opportunity to have any collaboration or input on the development, because if there was disagreement, I'm not how far disagreement by the General Assembly on what the standards were that were developed, how far that would put us back in the process and what kind of timeline crunch we would be on in order to get the modifications implemented timely. So if you have issues or if you have interest and concern, how would you get involved as a General Assembly member earlier in the process to have that input and collaboration?
That's an excellent question. So there are 2 public comment periods in advance of where we are today. But I'll be honest, Representative Petrie, if we hear from a legislative partner at any point, we would carry forward that feedback to the members of the advisory panels and review committee. And so there is some, I think, honor and authority with your position that at any point you wanted to provide feedback in the process, we would carry that forward. But the 2 open public comment periods in advance of us being here today would be another opportunity to provide feedback. And then there will be, as I stated, once we take these forward to the Board of Education in August, there's another round of public comment that would also afford some engagement as well.
That is helpful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I'll just ask this kind of a follow-up to Chair Petrie's question. I know we're a little further along in this process. What other standard reviews are going on, and what other cohorts are going on that maybe members might want to be involved in?
That's a great question. Crystal, do you want to speak to that?
So currently mathematics is under review, and so they have had their second round of public comment, and so they're coming back together in June to make some final revisions to that. And then we have other standards within library media, computer
science.
Yeah.
And I think the technology, the Casper technology standards as well. Those 3 are supported by our Office of Education Technology, and we partner with them in terms of the publication of that information.
Thank you. Now we're going to transition to early literacy outcomes. I think we may have a little shift, an addition at the table. Christy, good to see you again. Could you identify yourself for the record, and I'll administer you the oath?
Yes, sir. Christy Biggerstaff, Director of Early Literacy for the Kentucky Department of Education.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Good to have you here, and please proceed.
Thank you so much, Chair Tipton. So our purpose today in this presentation is to share how your investment in literacy and the Read to Succeed Fund specifically is leading to increased outcomes for Kentucky students. So the first slide that I have, this is the most recent findings that have been shared from the Education Scorecard. And that study is completed in collaboration with Harvard, Stanford, and Dartmouth. And they found that Kentucky ranks 5th in reading and 8th in math recovery among states. And so it does put us as a top performer across the nation. And I've got 2 kind of points there on the slide I want to draw your attention to. So after the pandemic, most states saw an improvement or a rebound in math achievement relatively quickly. But we are just now beginning to see in 2025 the turnaround for reading. And I think that this next point is critical. So the recovery in reading appears to be related to state early literacy reforms. So all of the states, to include Kentucky, which improved in reading between 2022 and 2025, were implementing comprehensive science of reading reform. So you can see we're in good company there with states such as Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee. And I'm very happy to see that we have made gains. after the pandemic, knowing and acknowledging we have more work to do, it is still something to be celebrated, and the extensive work that's happening in districts across the Commonwealth. So the next slide, I hope this is helpful to you. There are many, many strategic initiatives that are happening under the umbrella of Read to Succeed and through the funding of the Read to Succeed Fund. And it is all grounded in both the Act and then specifically in KRS 158.305. On the left-hand side of that slide, that's all of our professional learning mechanisms. You can see the Kentucky Reading Academies, our leadership network, and then we do have an annual conference, which Christy will speak to. On the right-hand side, this is our partnership schools with our literacy coaching model to support schools with greatest need. It also includes the technical assistance that we're providing through some of our professional learning coordinators and regional principal support leaders. And then the links there, that's our statewide guidance, so that's accessible by each and every district across the state. But I'm going to turn it over to Christy now to go into greater details on many of these strategic efforts.
So when Kentucky invested in the reading academies, in the professional learning, the goal was not simply to provide just professional learning. The goal is to change and support instructional practice in classrooms. These findings that you see suggest that is exactly what is happening. Over the last 4 cohorts of letters, we've had over 7,000 Kentucky educators and administrators join in this professional learning. And as that investment has grown, we have worked really closely with our evaluator to ensure that that investment is reaping profits. I would like for you to look at or draw your attention to the second bullet point on the slide, because the results are particularly noteworthy. Participants entered the course of letters with a pre-assessment average of 65%, and they left that course in the professional learning with a post-test average of 95%. So that is a substantial increase in learning and knowledge around the science of reading.
And then I'm going to speak a bit to the most recent letters report that was completed by our partner, the Kentucky Reading Research Center. So they were drawing on data from 574 elementary schools across 135 districts. And I'd like to point you to the second bullet as well. So the study found that schools with more letters-trained teachers experienced stronger growth in the share of students reaching proficiency, and they saw a greater reduction of the number of students scoring novice on the Kentucky Summative Assessment. And so this matters because letters training is helping to move students into reading proficiency, and we want to find additional ways to support that learning for additional teachers across the Commonwealth. The next slide, this is from our Reading Research Center partner. And so I wanted you to be able to see more specifically the data. So if you look at the baseline year of 2022, and I want to mention, so the first cohort of letters started in the fall of 2022, and they would not have completed their learning until the fall of 2024. So it's a 2-year professional learning program. It is extensive. But you can see there at the very beginning, we were already seeing some reductions in novice and increases in the rate of proficiency. But if you look at even the next year with that baseline year of 2023, it's even more significant. So we're seeing a greater reduction in novice and a significant increase in proficiency based on those outcomes. The next slide includes the subgroup data, and at the Kentucky Board of Education meeting that's actually tomorrow, the Reading Research Center will be there to speak to this data. This is new information that will be shared with our board. And so, Representative Tipton, I'll make sure that members of the committee also get that PowerPoint so that you can see it. So we've got broken down by the specific subgroups here. But the good news is that there is a common thread. So across student populations, higher letters training density consistently reduces novice rates and increases proficient level achievement, demonstrating that investing in teacher training drives measurable literacy gains across the Commonwealth for all of our students. And then the next slide, I wanted to make sure that I also elevated our third-party evaluation. So ICF is our partner. The evaluation from 2025 showed that we were demonstrating positive, statistically significant growth for students who were taught by letters-trained teachers. So if you look at those first 2 bullets, grade 5 students taught by letters-trained teachers over consecutive years performed significantly higher than than their peers, than other students. And then I think this is really powerful. Students with an IEP in grades 4 and 5 who are exposed to 2 years of a letters-trained teacher significantly outperform their peers with less exposure to letters-trained teaching.
As we think about the future of literacy professional learning in Kentucky, our goal is to increase the access while maintaining quality. We know that one size does not fit all when it comes to educator learning. These pathways align directly with House Bill 253 that was recently passed, which requires Kentucky educators to receive professional learning in the science of reading by 2930. As more educators seek to meet that requirement, we need options that are flexible, responsible, scalable to different roles and experience levels. Letters will continue to be a very important part of our strategy. We'll continue to offer some cohorts of letters, but the AIMS pathways that you see on your screen, we're really excited about because they simply provide additional flexibility. They allow educators and leaders to engage in targeted learning based on specific needs that's still grounded in the science of reading and its quality. Especially excited about the specialized courses that you see. This is for educators that will have already taken letters or the foundational science of reading course, but we have a course for writing and a English learners course and a demystifying dyslexia course that we're very excited to be offering to our educators as well. The next slide, in addition to our partnership with AIMS Pathways, we are also going to be expanding access to the science of reading professional learning through Kentucky's own Learning Hub. These courses were developed in partnership with SchoolKit and designed to help educators connect the reading research directly to classroom practice. They can be used in PLCs, coaching cycles, leadership development, onboarding, and individual professional study. One advantage of these courses is accessibility. They are self-paced, available online, and designed specifically for Kentucky educators. As you can see, we will be offering both an elementary course and a secondary course, something that I get asked about very often. On the next slide, another professional learning opportunity. The Read to Succeed Conference is a phenomenal example of how Kentucky is turning statewide literacy investment into educator learning, shared practice, and momentum across districts. This conference brings together kindergarten through 12th grade educators and leaders around one shared goal: strengthening literacy instruction through evidence-based practices around the science of reading. This year, we are offering 75 sessions and expect up to 1,600 attendees, and that's our capacity with our venue. The growth matters across those sessions because that shows the demand across Kentucky. I have educators and administrators wanting to engage in this conference. Educators want practical support, clear examples, and then time to learn from local, state, and national experts, and that's exactly what we're giving them in the Read to Succeed conference. I will say an invitation has been extended to all of you, and if you would love to come to the conference, it's June 8th and 9th. We would absolutely love to have you there.
At the Galt House in Louisville.
I'm going to turn it over to Mickey, who's going to talk about our statewide literacy coaching model.
So again, the next piece that we want to talk about are just our goals for that statewide coaching model. And you can see on this slide the programmatic components. So science of reading professional learning, access to those high quality instructional resources that we've referred to, and coaching is meant to yield both short-term, midterm, and some long-term outcomes. So you can see the short-term outcomes: improved educator knowledge about the foundations of early literacy and changes in educator beliefs. And so we have had a lot of discussions in our state about this shift from balanced literacy approaches to structured literacy practices and looking at evidence-based curriculum and the tools and resources that are needed to best support student learning around literacy. So that shift is happening. We are seeing that among educators. We're also seeing improved literacy instructional practice, which is part of our midterm outcomes. And I am so thankful to report, as evidenced by the information shared today, that we are starting to see increases in student outcomes as a result of this work. So that state literacy coaching model is supported by our specialists who are placed in schools with greatest need. And you can see there, I don't want to read that word for word for you, but their whole goal is supporting teachers and leaders around the implementation of evidence-based literacy instruction, using their adopted instructional resources, and improving student reading outcomes through coaching and support.
So over the past 3 years, Kentucky has steadily expanded our literacy coaching model. We want to increase support for schools with the greatest needs. One of the lessons that we have learned very early in this work is that improving literacy outcomes requires support at multiple levels in the system. Teachers need support, principals need support, district leaders need support. They all need support in order to have a systematic approach to literacy. At the center of this model are our school-based literacy coaches. They work side by side with teachers to strengthen instruction, support implementation of high-quality instructional resources, and help translate that professional learning into classroom practice. Our coaches spend significant time in PLCs, helping teachers internalize lessons and units. This proactive work really ensures that students receive grade level instruction every day. And then we have our state regional literacy directors, and they provide an additional layer of support because they are coaching the coaches, but they are also supporting the school administrators and district administrators. But we also recognize that principals play a critical role in this work. And they have to be able to sustain this institutional instructional change. So our regional principal support leaders work directly with school leaders to strengthen literacy leadership, instructional feedback, and implementation of systems. On the next slide, you can see by our numbers there how we have grown each year, just a steady increase of our literacy coaches. We're really wanting to scale this model out. So each year we've expanded our capacity to support more schools, more educators, and more districts. In 24-25, we supported 23 partnership schools through 23 literacy-based coaches. School-based literacy coaches, while providing regional support to more than 50 districts. In 25-26, that grew to 31 partnership schools for the upcoming year. You can see there in 26-27, we have expanded that to 41 partnership schools in 32 districts. This slide really represents the districts that have chosen to partner with KDE through the state literacy coaching model. And these partnerships, as you are scanning that list, span rural, urban, independent, and county districts across the Commonwealth. On the next slide, these numbers help illustrate what statewide literacy support actually looks like on the ground. Behind every number you see on the screen is a teacher, a principal, a team working to improve literacy outcomes for students. Our coaches spend significant time in classrooms, observing instruction, providing feedback, and facilitating PLCs. The volume of coaching activity reflects the intensity of the support that's being provided. Thousands of classroom visits, as you can see on the screen, hundreds of coaching cycles, repeated opportunities for teachers and leaders to strengthen practice over time. And implementation science tells us that lasting change requires ongoing support, feedback, and opportunities to practice. And these numbers demonstrate that Kentucky is making that investment in educators every single day. The next slide, I won't read all of this to you, but when educators receive sustained support and feedback, implementation becomes stronger, instruction becomes more consistent, and students benefit. 94% of coach teachers reporting that coaches improved their instruction and their students' literacy outcomes. The quote in the middle comes from a principal, which is important because it reflects the school's leader perspective on the impact coaching is having on instruction in their schools daily. And what makes that last quote very powerful is that moves beyond educator perception and speaks to student outcomes. The district saw a meaningful reduction in the reading improvement plans that they had in their school with just 1 year of having a coach. And as we look ahead, the focus is simply not to grow the model with more literacy coaches, but our focus is to grow it in a way that's sustainable, strategic, and tied to student need. First, we want to continue to identify strong literacy experts and high-performing teachers who can serve in partnership schools with the greatest need. Second, we are expanding our high-quality instructional resource support through OTL professional learning coordinators and our RPSLs, our principal coaches. This gives districts more targeted help for implementation and not just on selection of materials. And finally, sustainability matters. The long-term goal is for districts to build their own literacy systems, strengthen local leadership, maintain high-quality instruction, even after our state support starts to fade. Continued expansion is really about building capacity in Kentucky so that more students experience strong literacy instruction every single day. Okay. I would love to tell you all the details about the Kentucky LN Network, but I know that we are short on time, so I will say this. The Kentucky LN Network focuses on district support versus the individual teacher support in the classroom with the coaches. So as you can see there, we had 33 districts that joined the network in 24. We've added every year, and now we are supporting over 80 districts with our Kentucky LN Network statewide. Those are the districts that are in the Kentucky LN, and again, that's made up of a district leader, a principal, the school leaders, local teacher leaders that come together to our network to learn so they can sustain this work. We did a survey around Kentucky LN. The yellow bars there represent before Kentucky LN. The blue bars there represent after Kentucky LN. So you can see the first is about knowledge around early literacy instruction. The yellow is before, the blue is after. That's a 52% gain. The next slide is effective strategies for monitoring that implementation of curriculum, and that is a 68% gain after Kentucky LN. And the last one is, I think, critical because it talks about how they can support instruction and access to grade level learning for all diverse learners and their needs, and that was a 65.1% shift.
And then lastly, I just wanted to mention some of our next steps to maximize impact. So we acknowledge that our work is not finished. We have much more to do, but we want to lean into those things that are proven to be effective to scale those strategies to reach more students for greater impact. So you can see there, Christy has spoken to the additional science of reading professional learning. I did want to mention the second bullet. So we have an ongoing RFP to provide a partner for support to have resources for parents and families. That should include, we hope, decodable text, knowledge building text, manipulatives that they can have access to at home to enrich what's happening in the school environment. We are expanding trainings to address adolescent literacy needs. You know, this shouldn't happen just at grade 3. It really needs to extend into middle school and beyond to support those students in making accelerated progress toward proficiencies and navigating complex grade level text. We're looking to amplify success stories to inform statewide best practice. And then the last bullet there is about that HQIR repository. So that was a part of Senator West's Senate Bill 207 from 2025 session. And so we will have a repository where our approved HQIR live. And within that resource, it should promote fair pricing so that districts are getting the best that they can across all districts and not having to work directly with the vendor to negotiate those rates. We'll do that on behalf of districts. But collectively, I just want to reinforce our gratitude for the support of the General Assembly around this piece of legislation and the funding. You know, none of this work happened by accident. It has taken strategic planning. It has taken great vision and coherence and partnership with districts. And we cannot do that alone. Just as we need districts, we need the support of our legislative partners. And I would ask you, I'm remiss to sit at this table and not say that we are seeking sustainable funding to be able to continue this good work to support districts and communities across the Commonwealth. So thank you so much for the time today. I will yield to the chair if we even have time for questions.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. It's always good to have encouraging news, but like you said, there is more work to do.
Absolutely.
We do have a question from Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And ladies, thank you. And I think Chairman said it, a little positive information to leave here on today is a good thing. But you know, I've been in education almost 40 years, I think, and I don't think I've ever seen, and I was asking Scott, I don't think I've ever seen the collaboration that's taken place in this effort to improve reading with our kids in the state of Kentucky. I don't think I've ever seen any other initiative that's had the collaboration between the legislature, KDE, the school systems, the whole 9 yards, parents, everybody. So it's amazing to see that collaboration and to think what we can do when we all work for the same goal, pull in the same direction. So I guess my question would be, and you mentioned the money, and what could we do, what could the legislature do to help in making this ongoing, and maybe even add this to math and social study, science, other areas of need. But what can we do? And for example, I was even thinking on our state accountability testing, if we had something on there for districts that have literacy coaches or the number of teachers that are letters trained, those types of things. What can we do to incentivize, I guess is my question, to continue this and maybe even take it to other areas?
I'll get started, and then Christy, if I want you to lean into this as well. But I think first and foremost, and I'm just going to be very transparent, Representative, the last legislative session, when there was discussion around the LARS items and shifting in that, I was very, very concerned about that shift, because we want as much funding as possible going to local districts, but in many ways, in this area, there has been the need for statewide support and coherence and guidance. And so we've worked very hard at the KDE to be seen as a support in this work, and not a gotcha, not a compliance police, but truly to come alongside of districts, to learn with them, and to be able to provide adequate support. So I would ask for sustainable funding, and if there is a shift in those large items, that Read to Succeed would be considered outside of that discussion for the sustainability of this work. But I also think that there is a possibility for us, with the existing funding base, with the flexibility that we're now going to be providing in the professional learning opportunities. Representative Tipton's House Bill 253 furthered that effort. So now we're really able to support more comprehensive training for teachers. So that's moving. And I think that the network supports, that's been one of the most encouraging and powerful aspects of this work. It's the district speaking to the value add of this. We're not having to say a word. They're talking to each other, and it allows them to network together in just very powerful ways. So the funding is critical, and we'll be here, I hope, in October to talk more about the CAS for mathematics and our numeracy efforts. And so there's a disparity currently in the amount of funding that we have for our literacy efforts and those for numeracy. And so it will be a point of discussion, I am sure, at that time.
Thank you, Mickey. I know a lot of our members had to go to other meetings, but I wished everybody could have been here to hear this portion of it.
Thank you.
And to hear those comments. Thank you.
Final question, Representative Bratcher.
Thank you very much. Some great information you all brought to us, and I appreciate that. But I just want to recap on some of the things you had mentioned. You said we were 5th in the nation, but that's 5th in the nation of recovery.
That's correct.
That's not
yes,
5th
sir.
in the nation of math. And so out of all the 35 different states that after COVID went into a recovery because we were so low in reading, because we were so low in reading, we ranked 5th in the improvement.
That's correct.
Not in 5th. And so, and based on some of those other numbers, is we still are not at the levels we were before COVID, because we were at 60-some% reading proficiency, and we're still at 45 and 50%, or in that range of reading proficiency at grade level. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, Representative.
All right, thank you.
I don't want to end on that note. I want to say one quick thing, and just say that the improvements that we are seeing, statewide, is amazing. It's going to take a little while to get to that student level data, because I do feel like it will get there. What we are seeing on a daily basis, the superintendents that are calling me, the principals that are calling me, the examples that we're seeing, what we're doing is working, but it does take some time to actually get to that assessment data.
When Senate Bill 9 passed in 22, Senator West and I both acknowledged this was going to be a process.
Yes, sir.
It's going to take some time to implement. Thank you all for your presentation.
Thank you.
Members, we do have 8 regulations on our agenda for review. Do any members have any? Representative Bojanowski.
Okay.
So my question is about the KAR 3410 on the preschool education programs. And I've had some preschool teachers since I did the caseloads bill, preschool teachers saying, are there any caps on caseloads and class sizes for preschoolers? So it does say in the regulation that it would be no more than 20 students, one teacher and one assistant. But I talked to a teacher who had 7 students with autism, and 70% of the kids in the class were special ed students on an IEP. And I'm just concerned about not having more granular guidance about how many special ed kids per adult or per teacher are in the rooms. So I hope I made myself clear, but that's my concern.
Mr. Allen, would you like to come forward and ease Representative Bojanowski's concerns? Please introduce yourself for the record.
Good afternoon. Todd Allen, General Counsel, Deputy Commissioner, Kentucky Department of Education.
Andrea Bartholomew. Thank you. Andrea Bartholomew, Director, Early Learning Unit.
Hello, I'm Melody Cooper. I'm a policy advisor at the Department of Education.
Please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, please proceed.
So, Representative Bojanowski, I would point to the part of the regulation that also does require that the programs have a policy in place to address the individual needs of students. So how they would change the class size or the number of adults in the classroom depending on individual needs and students with disabilities and things like that. So that is part of the requirements.
Representative Kleins, you like to comment on this?
Yes, I had some questions about the same regs here. On Section 5, it talks about reliable proof of the student's identity. It's a birth certificate or reliable proof. That could be up to like 8 to 11 pieces of information. Is there any reason why you chose not to create a more specific list of reliable proof?
I believe we were pointing back to the statute that would govern the enrollment for students, in any public school program, K through 12 included. And so we were just aligning with the requirements and the language around those statutes.
If I may, so some of the ones I'm reading, like Social Security card, passport, military ID, baptismal certificate, driver's license, adoption records, notarized statement from a parent or guardian. It seems pretty broad if I can write a notarized statement of the age of my child. So I had certainly had some concerns about reliable proof. Also, it talks about eligibility and it talks about screening. It says under eligibility, approved for free lunch based upon federal free lunch criteria, but nothing in the eligibility talks about the screening. Is that in a different reg? Because is this just about the program and not specifically about the eligibility?
I'm going to let Andrea Bartholomew answer that part. I believe that speaks to the screening for whether a student would be a student with a disability.
That would be a clarification to ask. Is that what you mean by that question?
Yeah, I mean, so it says here that, to be eligible for the program, you have to be a resident, 4 years old, by August, approved by free and reduced lunch, maybe determined 6 to 4 years or 6 months prior rather than 4, but it says nothing about the actual screening. And before that, it says who are at risk of educational failure, which replaces at risk. So what are you determining to be at risk of educational failure?
I can
You got that one? Okay.
So we changed it to align with the language that's in the preschool statute. So it uses the language risk of educational failure, and so that's why we aligned the regulatory language to say the same. With the screening piece, that's where a district would determine whether or not a student needed those response to intervention type under the MTSS system to determine if an evaluation is needed and whether or not a student would end up qualifying as a student with a disability. Is there more you would add to that?
No. That is listed in the regulation in a different section. About screening, what's required of a screening
And
for
then
educational failure.
I just have a couple more, Chair.
Briefly, please.
Thank you very much. Section 6, it talks about adequate time. If you have a double session program, is utilized, adequate time is permitted for the teacher who's teaching a double session. Is there a specific reason why you wouldn't give the adequate time? And what I'm trying to protect is teachers' free time.
We certainly understand that concern, and it basically comes down to the local control from the district. Setting the daily schedule is something that the districts are entitled to do, and so we can't name that time period here, but we do understand that concern and share that as well, Representative.
And then lastly, on Section 7, it talks about integrates social and emotional supplemental curriculum. So you're adding that the learning environment should include SEL curriculum. Is that how I'm reading that?
It could be a curriculum or a framework that some districts use as well to integrate social and emotional learning throughout the day.
Which, if I could add, that's something that the majority of our districts already do. They already have those programs in place.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Camille, was your question about this reg or another?
This reg.
Okay, please proceed.
Oh, thank you. And just to follow up on Rep. Klein's question about the change to at risk of educational failure. One of my concerns is that by changing that, and I know that you said it's referenced in a different reg, but will some students then perhaps not qualify based on how they qualified in the past? When we talk about somebody being at risk financially, socially, emotionally, or with some form of disability. And I was, in my head, I was just trying to think about a way to maybe expand it or to protect kids, to make sure that they're getting services that they need. If it's expanded to something like at risk for not meeting academic and social expectations, the financial piece may be in there as well, but I'm just worried about some kids missing out on the opportunity.
This should not change anything about eligibility for it's KRS 157-3175, which is the statute that requires the department or the Board of Education to promulgate these regulations for the state preschool program. And so we just know the regulation for preschool is really old. It had not been addressed since the dawn of time for preschool in Kentucky. And so we just looked back and decided to align that language with what was in the statute. But it's that the at risk of educational failure refers to the financial risk.
Great. May I ask, I've got two more if that's all right.
Please proceed.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. That helps me a lot. One of the questions I had too in Section 5, I noticed that it changed from a certificate of immunization or to a certificate of immunization instead of requiring it to be on a Kentucky certificate, which I know sometimes that was a hardship for some families to get an immunization certification or certificate transferred over. Is that consistent now for all K through 12?
The intent of changing the wording there for those any required documents would be to align it with what is required for K-12.
Okay.
So not changing K-12 to align with the preschool requirements, but making sure that preschool is in line with the K-12 requirements for school enrollment.
Okay, thank you. And I just had one more question about it, and that's Section 6.1a. And I think it's just for clarification for for those who have a state-funded program, where it reads amend standard half-day, 5-day week program for single section or session, and change it to read to standard half-day, 5-day week program, single or double. Just clarifying that they're not all. Let me pull that up again. Sorry. It was section 6(1)(a).
And so which part did you have a question about? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Just where it refers to single or double session, where that language was changed. Going down to, let's see, no portion of state fund. Wait, hang on. I'm in section 4 instead of 6.
Oh.
Sorry. So let's go to 6. 1A. The section where it's talking about, if we go up to A on that. I'm sorry, the clarification on this was not a change that was made. I was suggesting clarification on a single or double session. Sorry. I have a lot of notes written down. But that's what I'm just wondering is if there could be something added like that just to clarify for districts with the state-funded program. Does that make sense?
In A, so to clarify that a standard half-day, 5-day-a-week program could be a single session or a double session.
I think we could address that through guidance for sure.
That'd be great. Thank you. That's all I had.
All right, I will remind the committee of our regulation process. And I've got a guidance document here from KRS, or it's actually 13A.300. Requests can be made from a committee member or agency representative. However, the other party has to agree. In essence, if there's no agreement between the parties, if we don't take action, the reg continues through the process. There can be a request for a deferral to a subsequent meeting within the review period to work on differences. However, that cannot go past the 90-day review period. The committee can also find the regulation deficient. There are 11 guidelines here to do that, precise guidelines. So I'm just going to provide that for the committee information. Any member wish to take any action? Senator Titchener.
I'd like to make a motion to defer this reg to our next meeting.
I second.
All right. Is that in agreement with the agency?
That's fine.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, no? Okay. Now that is specific to 704. Well, for the record, it's specific to 704 KAR 003.410. That's the one we've been discussed. That is just for the record. Is that fine with the motion and the seconder? If not, that motion carries. We will, and I would suggest if you have questions for KDE to get with them between now and our July meeting to discuss, and hopefully when we come back in July, this will be quickly resolved. Let's see. We had a meeting of the minds with the co-chairs. Our next meeting, there is a date change. We will be meeting on Monday, July the 6th instead of July the 7th. So please take note of that. Representative Jackson, you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a comment made about our reading scores, kind of, I think, I don't know if it was derogatory, but I just wanted to say on the last NAEP scores, Kentucky fourth graders ranked 6th in the country on NAEP reading scores. So I think that's an indication of the direction that we're headed. It does take time, but I think we're all headed in the right direction. So I just want everybody to leave on a positive note. We are doing some great things in reading, and that's going to continue to only get better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.